How's it going, everybody? My name is Mike Flanagan. I am not JR Raymond here tonight, but we're happy to bring you episode number 6 of the BowlerX live show every week on each and every Tuesday. Lee Sandt is here, though, and Lee is the constant that is always on here and one of the hardest working men in bowling. And Lee, thanks for having me on the show tonight and filling in for JR. How are things going for you this evening, and how are things at BowlerX?
Things are good. I'm glad you could fill in tonight in such short notice. JR had a personal matter to handle, and it really is, thank you very much for filling in.
No problem.
Everything BowlerX doing well. We've gotten some word. I know the bowling center that we're located in is now finally at least talking about opening up. So I don't have a date yet for our center, but it's encouraging. It's getting closer. So, but everything's good.
Yeah. Well, I'm a big fan of the show. I've been involved doing some producing work as well. I've been watching every single week. Really like the work that you and JR have been doing here on the show. And you got a great guest here tonight. We'll be bringing in here in just a few minutes, Chris Schlemmer, Roto Schlemmer.
Yeah.
Who will be bringing in tonight. And I noticed you wore your Roto Grip shirt.
I did. I think it was, right for the occasion.
I think it was too. So, BowlerX.com, though, you guys are open online, have been open during the entire pandemic, and you've got folks that are purchasing equipment every single day, and you ship stuff out right away. How's the business been, brother?
Well, I know we talked about this a little bit on some other shows. It really hasn't changed a lot since we last spoke about it. I mean, through this whole pandemic, business has been obviously down. Not many people are able to bowl anywhere. That is now changing. As a lot of people have probably noticed, there were some tournaments over the weekend and even during the week here, and very successful. That's encouraging too. The turnouts have been exceptional. I think people are really excited about getting back to bowling. So we've seen an uptick in equipment sales. And there are some new products on the market too. There's some new announcements. I know it's probably not as maybe quite as exciting as normally because a lot of people still aren't bowling, but there are some new products coming down the road. They were just added to the site, some today. And there are actually some Roto Grip products in there. And I know we're just looking forward to getting open here locally. We get a lot of people asking, want to come in and get fitted up and get some new equipment. A lot of people want to get their own bowling balls right now too. Maybe people that didn't have them before, looking to get their own stuff rather than using house balls. Understandably so.
Yeah, and I was on BowlerX just the other day, and I noticed you guys have a new membership program as well. What's that all about?
Very new, or something I'm just started dabbling in. We had some inquiries about a membership type program, and really there's three levels of membership. There's what we call the recreational bowler membership package, where they sign up, they will get a BowlerX shirt, and they'll get a chamois, and it's $20 to sign up. But the value of the shirt and chamois exceeds that already. And for 1 year, they'll receive 5% off on almost all products. There are some MAP priced products that can't be discounted. Balls, bags, shoes, for the most part, are included in that. Then we have a league package, which is $49.95, and that adds 5% off also on accessories. People that like to change their own grips, maybe do some of their own ball work, buy some tools that they use for working on their own equipment, plus everything that's in that first package. And one of the biggest things in that is there's also an added 5% bonus discount on items that are already on sale, which is really huge because we're very aggressive when we mark down sale products to start with. And when you can get another 5% on top of that, you're really making out really well. And then lastly, we have a XXX package, which is $100, $99.95. And that basically doubles the discount. That's a 10% discount. And that's on almost everything across the board. There are only a few items it doesn't work on. And at each level, you get some more BowlerX gear as well in the package, which basically almost pays for it right up front. The discounts are good for a whole year. It's really a no-brainer if you ask me. I mean, if you buy a lot of equipment, especially, you look at that $99.95 package, you're really going to make out in the end. You save a lot of money.
Yeah, it looks really cool, and you can check that out over at BowlerX.com over on the left-hand side. I see it's got a nice prime piece of real estate there. People can check that out. Really good deal, and I like what you're doing over there, trying to be innovative during the quarantine time. And when people get back to bowling, boy, that'll be some great savings for everybody, plus some added value in there. So that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think it's probably time to introduce our guest this evening.
Yeah.
Roto Schlem is what he goes by, Schlem Dog Millionaire. That's what I just nicknamed him just a little bit ago. He's a fellow St. Louis guy too, just like me. So a little bit of a hometown discount here tonight. And I wrote an article going on probably 10 years ago on Inside Bowling that I think Chris Schlemmer should be in the PBA Hall of Fame one day, because he has won so many titles as a ball rep. Probably more than any other ball rep out there. I haven't done the math recently, but this guy, he really broke onto the scene drilling balls on the truck. And then he was a ball rep for, Pete Weber in the glory days there when he was with Storm. And that Who Do You Think You Are, I Am. I remember off to the side, you see Schlem crying actually on that particular day when Pete won the 5th U.S. Open. And he's got a huge heart, and he's done a great job as a Roto Grip brand manager as well. So let's bring in our guest this week, Chris Schlemmer. Welcome to the program, Schlem Dog Millionaire. Good to see you.
Hey, man. What's up? What's up, Lee? What's up going on?
Hey, how are you?
Oh, just glad to be here, enjoying the weather here in blistery Utah. We've enjoying the heat wave of sorts. It's last week it was the second fastest to a 95-degree day in Utah history. So
95.
Yeah, well, it got to 96, and we hit 97 in some spots up this way not too long ago. I mean, now we don't count like down south like St. George because it's close to Vegas, but yeah, up here for us, it's been abnormally warm. As Mike can attest to that. I mean, it's been not normal. So yeah, ran through it. Figured I'd wear my luau shirt. What the hell?
It's colorful.
You've always got some nice jerseys, man. You had, I think, Fred Flintstone. I think you had a Kingpin one as well.
Oh, yeah, a couple of those. I've done plenty of stuff over the years with the different jersey vendors from, like you said, the flower stuff to, Fred Flintstone was one that's been a famous one across the industry. Some Kingpin ones, Big Earn and Roy Munson. Did some Big Lebowski designs. I've done some other just random stuff, just kind of, as you all know and seen over the years. That's why I had to laugh at the picture y'all had of me. That's from a couple years ago, and that's like 3 hairstyles ago. So, I'm the hairstyle. Lucky for me, I still have hair and it grows out, and my mohawk morphed into the come over thing. So, hey, I got that style rocking now. So, just always trying to keep it light, keep it fun. Where life's too short to get all too serious and stuff. So
got a comment coming in from Jack Olson. We have an interactive program here. Hey, Chris, the new Hustle looks great, and I'm excited to throw it soon. What can you tell us about that one?
Yeah, so we actually, like Lee mentioned, we had a couple new items coming in. We got basically our staples for both brands, for Roto Grip and Storm. It's in essence, even though we're living through a pandemic, we're still normally in the same kind of time frame as far as catalog season and stuff like that. And so we did add 2 new Hustles coming this year, expanded that line. So we got the Hustle PBR, which stands for purple, black, and red. And that's actually a sanded solid. And then we got the Hustle Wrap, and that is Royal Aqua Purple. And that's another pearl. My thinking on that to add the Hustle PBR, it's one of those things that we've kicked around for a while. Having a ball with some texture in that kind of, we use the term loosely in the industry as far as like an entry level performance. But there's still performance there, and really it's not entry level performance, I guess, if you will. It's still a high performance ball for most standards. But it's for the HP1 line for Roto Grip. And then comparison, you got to remember too, for Storm and Roto Grip, we mesh them, we kind of stair step them. So on the Storm side, we have the tropical surges. Then you kind of a little bit more reaction, you go to the Hustles, and now a little bit more reaction, you go to what we have in the hotline on the Storm side, the electrifies. So, so across that whole cluster, again, we haven't had a ball with texture. So that was really the mindset. That's actually kind of the starting point I had with that ball. I'm like, okay, I need to make a solid ball with a little bit of texture, not too much, because it still needs that shelf appeal. But in order to expound on that, I needed something that also had to look good when it sanded. So that's kind of really how that one started. So, yeah. And then the Hustle Wrap, that was, the Royal Aqua Purple. That was another one that, working on colors and, color combinations. We got a two-tone gold ball. We've got the 3TP, which is three-tone purple. Just kind of creating some just differences. Again, it's always, it's fun to try and, well, I should say fun, but it's also challenging to come up with color combinations that don't match like what's on the market. And, there's times and I've been around long enough because I'm old. But there's been times like you come up with a ball idea and man, it goes to market. And next thing you know, it's like 4 brands have the same color ball on the market at the same time. So you just can't control it. It happens, because we're in a color palette and, you're adding, different dyes and pigments to bowling balls. And, just when you think you got something like, oh man, this will be really good. And then, it hits the market and like, boom, somebody else has it. So,
Yep. I see that a lot. The Hustle line's been really a great line of Rotogrip now. I mean, we sell so many of those.
Yeah.
The performance is way above really the price point, especially, it came onto the scene with the Hustle Ink, and that ball just had tremendous scoring things across the country.
Yeah.
There was a lot of press, and it really took off from there.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I actually flew to out to Long Island to give Joe Navarro his 900 ring. He used Hustle 900. And, the other thing too, exactly what we said, Lee, the performance is above average in comparison. And we still make the Hustle Ink. And the one thing we have to note now, performance-wise, you're going to see that maybe just a touch more reaction again because these are now made in Utah again. We've changed facilities. We given the pandemic and a lot of changes in the industry. We were manufacturing some balls down in Texas at Global. One of our I like to I'm the little brother, so I like to refer to Global as like the adopted step cousin, twice removed. Those guys were doing a good job down there making balls, but Bill and Barb had to make some business decisions and different things. So anyway, we're making those in Utah now. And so yeah, performance-wise, you'll see a little bit, maybe a little bump up, just because our processes are a little bit different. So
yeah, I was going to say. I mean, I know obviously I've drilled the original Hustle Links. I've drilled the ones that came out of Texas. I mean, I don't know if it's a topic that's a sensitive topic or not, or that I don't know what you can say, can't say. But I mean, performance-wise, what is the difference of something coming out of the Texas plant that did come out of the Texas plant?
And no, I mean, and that's something that, in reality, in some cases people would tiptoe around it, but I always cut straight to the point. In all honesty, because they're using our same materials, stuff like that. The whole process is just different. It's kind of like the thing that, to be honest with you, it's kind of what Brunswick and Ebonite are going through right now with Brunswick buying Ebonite. They disassembled the production line in Kentucky. They've taken that to Mexico. They're going to reassemble it because there's a different process on, the way molds go through and the pour process and the lathe and the finish process. Everything's just a little bit different. And that's what we had with, you got to remember too, the Global plant, or actually the remnants of, back in the day was a lot of those machines come from the old Columbia plant. So some of those are really, some of the pieces, parts are really old. But again, you're talking about technology. I mean, that's dating back to, you remember back when Columbia had their last, some of the stuff was, refixed whenever they had that last fire. They're in the early 2000s, before, they were purchased and everything transferred. But, some majority of that stuff, you're talking technology from 30, 40 years ago, so it was just, and like I said, just the finish process and everything like that. And then you get you factor in a lot of other variables too. I mean, it's one of those things that, just a lot of things you can't control. You got to look at, one of the common denominators is temperatures. The average temperature in Texas is nothing like what we have here in Utah. So that just adds to the finish process as well. Like I said, it was, people used to say, oh, well, it's this and that. I'm like, no, it's the same materials. We buy from the same vendor and it's the same material going there. Cause we were making some other balls down there too, even on the storm side, were made in Texas. And it's just a process and things. But like I said, we're back in, we're cranking it in Utah, and that's what you guys are going to see. So
yeah, well, I think that's a good thing, honestly. I mean, I've drilled, like I said, both of them, and you have too. They don't even drill the same. You know what I
Correct.
mean? They don't
Yeah,
go as late.
you felt, and anybody who's an experienced ball driller, it's one of those things that, and I can even remember way back in my days when I was first getting into business, it's like, there's times where you get balls and, and that even goes back to way back. We're talking like the 90s when I got into the industry and stuff like that. There's times where you drill in a ball and you get the next batch of them. We're like, well, hey, this is a little bit different. Whether it's core material or cover stock, or, in some cases, depending on the brand, they're towards the end even. AMF, been a manufacturing bowling balls for a really long time. And I can remember back in my days, there was a point in time where some of the AMF balls were actually coming from the Ebonite and the Kentucky plant. So you're like, oh, this is supposed to be, this, you as soon as the drill gets into it, you're like, whoa, hey, what was that? You're like, that's
Exactly.
like, so yeah, it's just, like I said, it's processes and things like that. There's a lot of, you start talking chemistry and you got variables and, cure times and all kinds of stuff. So just a different process. So,
yeah.
Got a question coming in here, or more of a comment from Lloyd Little. Says, Chris, you are a true legend in the sport.
Oh.
Why did they allow the extra weight hole in the beginning? Also, I have a bottle of Pendleton Midnight when you come out to another tournament.
All right, Lloyd, my man. Yeah, well, I appreciate the kind words. I wouldn't go quite legend. What's funny is I'm getting older, and recently, well, let's see, May 1st. We're actually June now. May 1st was actually, I've been with Storm now for 19 years. Which, of course, there's plenty of stories that go around about, Schlem back in the days when I hired in at Storm, I wasn't even old enough to rent a car, as I'm tour repping, I had to use certain rental car places because they were the only ones that would let me pay the extra fee to rent a car. So I had to, battled through all that. Yeah, getting into the balance whole thing, that's one of those things that those of us who have been around a long time, and if you can remember way back when, the crazy part is learning what I've have over the years, and the fact that Roto Grip was actually one of the key contributors and the leading factors as far as offset technology. Vinny Tito, the guy that founded Roto Grip, which we got Roto Grip started in 1955. And again, talking what I was talking about before with bowling balls, Roto Grip never actually had their own production facility. So Roto Grip balls back in the day, and actually up until when Bill and Barb bought it in 97, Roto Grip bowling balls were made at all different manufacturing plants. There was times back in the day, there was batches, there were certain balls made by AMF. There was some made by Ebonite, some made by Columbia, some made by Brunswick. So there was a lot of different things going on. But anyway, getting back to Vinny's deal, he was making balls with Columbia at the time there. And that's those of you that are old enough to remember the RH and the LH, and those actually standing for right-handed or left-handed. And it happened to be, it was my understanding from all the research I've found and some of the files we got when, Bill and Barb obtained it. The deal is he had got a batch of balls from Columbia, and he drilled one. And, you remember back in the day, it was, you always drill everything straight over the label, like CG was in your hand kind of thing. And he drilled one, and it hooked. Oh, now we're talking back in the lacquer, like not a whole lot of motion days. He drilled one, and it hooked like 2.5 boards, 3 boards, and he freaked out. He's like, "What is this?" And we laugh at that now because you're like, "Oh man, 2 or 3 boards." You're like, "Man, I'm missing the target," and the ball. We're talking about when the conditions and all these other variables weren't even there. And come to find out, once he scaled it out, the ball had loaded side weight in it. And so from that point on, he had a lefty buddy because he drilled another one that didn't hook at all. And they just found that their cores were the inner cores, and they weren't technology advanced. They were just, some solid materials kind of just shoved in the middle.
Yep.
And so he was the one actually that set that up. The right-handed, left-handed, they actually had, they had like 3, there was batches of them that had difference, but a lot of them had like 3/4 side and like, I think 5/8 finger just kind of naturally built into them. And, that was kind of how it all kind of really began. And then as everything evolved, from cores to cover stock technology and everything like that, I can remember, I was telling the story the other day. I was on another interview deal. I'm like, man, when I was 14, and when I got into bowling, because I played other sports, like bowling was never, not really even on the radar. But basketball injuries, baseball injuries, whatever. Man, my first balls were I had a plugged yellowed out and a plugged U dot that one of my dad's buddies gave me. Like that's what I learned to bowl with, because reactive hadn't even really come out yet.
Right.
So, yeah. Hey, Carlos. Speaking of a guy from my past, there's Carlos. I've known Carlos since I was a little kid. But so anyway, yeah, the evolution of reactive bowling balls and all that stuff, and as we learned, as technology advanced with cover stocks and cores, and then even back then. I want to say, I'm trying to remember when the balance hole thing came into play. I want to say it was like the 80s, I believe. It was one that some of the tour guys had figured out that you got to remember, back then you had pancake weight blocks. We hadn't even, ebonite hadn't even evolved into the two-piece cores and stuff yet. So it was, hey, can I shift this? Now we got a piece of mass over here. I can make the ball want to go this way. But yeah, now we're actually going. Not that we're going backwards, but we're going to a controlled environment, which you have to understand too. And I think that's one of those things that ball drills, and Lee, you probably understand this, and you're getting it probably more and more questions as we get closer to that August 1st deadline. The deal is now you can shift bowling balls. You get 3 ounces any direction. In some cases, back in the day, well, I should say as recently as this past year, how many times you get somebody brings a ball in, they're like, hey, it doesn't quite roll real good. And you kind of measure things out and you look at it, you're like, oh, okay, well, the key component is still pin to PAP and really where you position that core mass in there. And now the fact that we don't have that balance hole, as I like to refer to it, even Hank Boomershine, we refer to those as, we used to call them correction holes in some cases, because you're trying to, I can't count the number of times in all my travels, not even just tour life, but when I'm out on tour and then you'll visit a pro shop and you do an appearance, or you go here, there, and you pop in, or people are bowling a pro-am, and all of a sudden one of the staff guys, hey, Schlemer, can you come look at this ball? Okay. You go check it out, and you kind of look at it and go, okay, well, you watch them throw it, and you're like, and they're kind of maybe clipping a finger or a thumb, and it's kind of like a 1.5 inch pin out ball, and then it's like out here. And so you kind of pop a hole in it way down low, kind of push everything, and like, oh, it rolls way better. Like, how'd you do that? And I'm like, well, just, basically laws of physics, trying to get stuff, into motion, in the right spots. But yeah, I mean, I think as we move forward, with technology, with the different cores and different things we have, we've played around with some stuff, and even like the UFO. I mean, that was one of the Hank's thought processes on that moving forward. With again, the basis part of the ET core is a light bulb, but having those built-in cavities, your thumb pretty much goes in that big cavity on top every time. So those smaller cavities, depending on how you drill it, shifting them out, again, we can't put extra holes in them. So now you've got a little something extra to kind of try and help that process. And again, we're talking, in all reality, we're talking small, minute transition spots on a lane. But for most bowlers, you'll actually see that, because again, if you don't have the rev rate like the tour guys, or you got to think. I like to think, because I grew up on the ladies tour, it's easier for bowlers to associate with the ladies tour players. Yep. I think ladies tour players are your average bowler who bowls in league a couple times a week. That or even like me. I mean, I don't have much of a rev rate at all. You got to position the core to make it do something. And so we're going to get into a more critical time. I think that's really the main focus right now. That we've talked about internally, and it's one of those things. Yeah, you get three ounces any direction, but again, if you still put a pin that's like 1 inches from somebody's, the pin's 1 inch from somebody's PAP, it's still not going to roll all that great. We kind of have to, where are you going to position that mass, and how are you going to make that for that player? And that's always been my kind of MO. And even going back, I mean, God rest his soul, Randy Labardi, a guy, Mike even knew him back in the day. He passed away a couple years ago now, but he was the guy that taught me how to drill balls. And even he got out of it, got back into it. And I try to, it was one of those things to explain to him all the time. I'm like, you have to build ball motion for a person. He's like, oh, I got this person, I'll do this and this. And I'm like, okay, well, how do you build it for that person? Because every person is a unique case. And Lee, like, and Mike, as well. I mean, when you fit a hand and you drill a ball for somebody, everybody's different. There's no like plug and play. You just can't go, oh yeah, you get a 3 3/8 leverage, and we're gonna stack the pin over this and da da da. Well, you might get away with it out of 3 out of 10, but that's not providing the best effort for your customer. I mean, so I think we're gonna get past this. I think, like I said, performance wise, really to be honest with you, the main focus, and as we all know, the main focus of it was by removing that balance hole thing is really to kind of bring the two-handers down a little bit. That's ultimately, they can say this or that, but I think that's one of those things, because of you got to take those guys with their super Mongo rev rates, and then you're creating that much more core torque. And now they don't have that. And, the funny thing is, and we're actually seeing him this week, Kyle Troop. Kyle, I just talked to Kyle before he made the road trip down to Florida to go practice, because he just found out that those PBA things happening this weekend. But we've talked about in the past, and even Anthony Simonson came out to the office back in November, December-ish. We did a lot of testing. Simo was a big one because he's worried about he doesn't have a big rev rate for a two-handed guy.
Right.
So he's like, man, if I don't have this balance hole, we got to figure some stuff out. So he started working with Alex on some stuff, and they were dialing in some stuff. And now Kyle, the same thing. Like I said, I talked to him about a week and a half ago. Once he found out this PBA thing was happening, this PBA Strike Derby is the first one. He's like, hey, he goes, yeah, what about, July, August? He goes, man, I got to come out. He goes, Kyle, he has a decent rev rate, but he's harder and more up the back of it. And he benefits from those balance holes. So now we're going to work with him trying to figure out core placements to get, just kind of help these guys. And it's, so it's as much of a learning curve for those guys as it is a one-hander.
Yeah. Do you see more use of asymmetrical cores?
Yeah, I believe so. That's one of those things that we've talked about internally, because you can, with asyms, obviously, on the different axis planes, you're creating more differential. And again, you're allowing, whenever you start shifting them, and again, like I said, the key is still going to be the pin to PAP, but the fact that we get 3 ounces all these different directions, trying to get some of these in spots, you're going to have to put stronger, pin to PAP spots, but you're also going to have to position the core in the right spot for that person. And if you go to these asymmetrics, you can now get mass in different spots. And that's the other thing too, based on how people throw balls and this and that. And that's one of those things that explaining to just regular over the last year, and I can remember even like the couple of military tournaments and some other stuff I've worked, even going out pro shop visits and stuff like that. Now, say you're trying to make a ball do a certain thing. Well, you got to kind of get the variables of that person, how they throw it. But now we can actually drill stuff. I mean, hell, depending on the top weight, you could be able to get the CG and the pin above the fingers. I mean, and we're talking now we can invert the cores a lot easier, even though we don't. And that was the thing before, a lot of us played around with flipping cores over and doing different things, but you'd also have to usually put a crater in it somewhere and make sure you put it in the right spot, that, somebody doesn't flare all over it, or it doesn't get too close to a certain, position. So you kind of, that kind of opens up a whole nother world of, again, it's a 4-inch pin, but I may go 4-inch pin, and then I might throw the PSA and clear up all over here in the track based on this core design. But then maybe the very next ball, I'm like, man, that one rolled really great, but all this core shape's a little bit different. I don't trust putting it there. I'm going to have to put it over here, And so, yeah, there's a lot. And to be honest with you, even us as manufacturers, it's going to be a learning curve for us too. I mean, and anybody that thinks they have it figured out, good luck. There's so many options if you stop and really think about it. So,
oh, absolutely. I can only imagine how much testing you have to put into something like that to see the different kind of reactions that you can obtain with all the different possibilities of even hole depth, PSA placement, pin to pap, everything, all the variables. It's almost endless.
Absolutely. I mean, and like exactly what you said. Funny you bring up the hole depth. That's going to be one of the key components for the two-handers, because they're using only 2 fingers. So that's going to be one of those things that we're going to have to play around with. This one, maybe this one was only a 1/2 inch deep, and this one over here is bury it, as far as you can go. Try and change RGs and diffs and do different things. So that's going to be, they don't have the luxury of, not only just drilling a straight thumb into it, or then you think about the minor additive to it when you put a slug, but now you put, a switch grip or an it or one of the other interchange, like the ultimate, any of the interchangeables, man, you're depending on where you put that honk and hole, you can make bowling balls do a lot of things. But again, the two-handers don't have that luxury. So, there's going to have to be a little bit more focus paid to them. And again, it's going to be case by case, trying to help them the best you can.
Yeah. How many of the guys out there that you work with are really concerned about layouts? And how many guys are just like, just give me a ball, I'm good to go? Like, how many of them really worry about the layouts themselves?
You're talking about like tour guys, like from back in the day? What's funny is there is a majority of the guys way back when, I was out there from 01 through probably, end of 2011. And there was a handful of guys you take like, I'll give you a prime example. One guy that's, going to have to try and figure it out is, God love him, but Norm Duke. Because Norm's always had this deal ever since I met him. Now, I met Norm back in the late 90s when I was working a ladies' truck, because there were some instances where the guys and girls bowled together. Way back in the day, we used to have the Merit mixed doubles in Vegas and some other stuff. And then there was the U.S. Open there in Connecticut where, the men's and ladies tour it was the same U.S. Open. And the guys' truck got overwhelmed because there was massive amount of entries, and the guys' truck got overwhelmed. So the tour guys, a lot of guys started coming to our truck, because we only had, the guys had 300 something entries, and I think the girls had like 130. So there was a big discrepancy as far as, how many balls they get drilled. But anyway, so I met a lot of those guys way back when. And, even back then, Norm was already gotten on his kick of everything has to be inch and 3/8 shifted. CG shifted inch and 3/8 with an extra hole drilled back to 3/8. And, kind of the pin in the same spot, that's kind of just Norm being Norm. Mm-hmm. I'll give you a funny story about that is the fact of, I can remember once Norm was a free agent because Norm bounced around a bunch of different staffs. And I was actually the one responsible for getting Norm actually on Storm staff due to the, how should I put this? I do respect authority and I do follow direction from my leaders, but I kind of went against the grain for a couple guys because, when Norm Duke comes to you, it's like, hey, man, I'll never forget the one year he showed after he became a free agent, he shows up in, I want to say we were in Oklahoma, and he's got a triple ball bag, and he's got 2 storm balls and I want to say, the Elite, the green alien ball.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And, he's like, here's what I got. Can you help me out? Well, at the time, I'm only a year and a half, 2 years in. Well, we still mandated like comps were only to like staffs only. And like, I had like a certain amount I could do. And I'm like, man, I can't give you a ball, bro. And he goes, well, you don't understand. He's like, well, I have this and this. I got 2 of your balls in the bag. So I remember calling the office, and I'll never forget, plain as day. I'm like, I called, I want to say, well, Bill Supper was still there at the time, and obviously Dave Sims and those guys were like in a meeting or something. And I asked them, I said, hey, so I got a situation. I said, I got Norm Duke hitting me up for bowling balls. I said, can I give Norm some bowling balls? And they're like, and of course, I think want to say Supper was the first one to chime in. Absolutely not. We've got, he was president of the company at the time. He's like, we got a budget. We got to stick to this and this and that. And da da da. And I'm like, man, okay. And, we're going through it and this and that. And I said, okay. So in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, man, I got to help. I'm thinking, man, it's Norm Duke. How do I not?
You got to make this happen, right?
Like, how do I not give Norm Duke a bowling ball?
Yeah.
And so, the first couple of weeks he gets through some stuff and he's like, hey, and like he's bowling really well. And, it was one of those deals. I'll never forget the way it all kind of transpired. He's like, hey, he goes, man, I'm only throwing you a storm ball. And again, it used to be, it takes him forever to work out a bowling ball. He finally is just now figuring out the interchangeable thumb, because it would be a deal where he's like, oh, I need ball reaction, I need this and that. And I'm like, well, dude, let's drill you 2 or 3 balls. He's like, well, it takes me an hour to work out one ball. I can't do that. I don't have time. So we had to make sure that one ball that we drilled had to be magic and be the one, because if not, the other couple ideas that I would have had or he would have had never get worked out. Yeah. But anyway, the deal was, he started bowling pretty well, and he's like, hey, storm ball. I'm like, you know what? I'm like, yeah, I'll give you another ball. So I give him 1 or 2 balls, and he ends up like he's like almost making the show. Like now we're like the 3rd week, and it's like, he pretty good. Now they're like, oh, he's making a run of the show. And so I called the office. I said, like, hey, what's going on? Because we used, back then we didn't have social media the way we have now. Everything wasn't instant access. So like, hey, how's it going? I said, well, we got Duke. And they go, what do you mean we got Duke? I'm like, well, he's throwing our stuff. And they go, well, can you guarantee he's going to throw our stuff on TV? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know why he wouldn't. I said, if the guy wants to win, he's going to throw our stuff on TV. And, back in the day, things were different, incentives and all this other stuff. And again, we're still posting incentives. We don't have the highest incentive by no stretch of the word, but, Norma's also, he'd reached a point in his career, and he's like, hey, And anyway, we get through that. He makes the show. He uses our stuff. I get a patch on him, whatever. Oh, that was cool. Well, then we had a stretch run where he made like 7 shows in a row. Mm-hmm. And they, finally the bosses, after a while, we get the contract, and he gets on staff, and the guys are like, man, I don't know how we got him on staff. I'm like, really? You don't know how we got him on staff? They're like, oh, we couldn't believe it. I'm like, it was one that Norm and I had a good working relationship back in the day. But, so he had his deal. Obviously Pete was pretty simple, kind of a pin up, pin down. And I come up with a couple of pin down drillings that he liked. Again, we're talking about legends of the game. You're talking, It doesn't matter, if it's, and I've been fortunate to work with a lot of them, and even guys that are on other staffs, there was still communication. There's times where I chat with Parker, chat, and I even had a little bit of stretch, a couple of times where I worked with Walter Ray, but, working with all these different guys, man, some of them are just so good. It's legit. I'm like, why don't you just pick up that house ball? Just throw that. Right. That's how good. Their talent level is so much different than others. It's really impressive. But then, other guys were, as the guys that weren't as, weren't quite on that level. Then it gets into, playing around with different bowling balls, and you're like, hey, what else you got for me? Hey, can you make my ball do this? There's times where we might drill 4, 5, 6 balls in a week. Yep. Just trying and find something where other guys will be like, nope, I know what this does. Hey, can you give me just a touch more surface? I can make this one work. And then the next guy's like, I'm like, man, the ball's pretty good. It didn't strike. I need 6 balls. Okay. So you kind of had one extreme to the other.
Yeah.
We got some questions coming in here. Let's get through a few of them here. It is interactive here. Steve asks, hey, Schlem, how does the absence of a weight hole affect a stroker and a very low rev rate like myself?
Yeah, so you're going to be, it's one of those deals that you're going to want to look to, we've been doing a lot of testing. And I don't know if you guys remember back a few years ago, we're actually in the process of, we have a system, the VLS system, and we're working on the next generation of that. But in the case of not having a balance hole, what we found, and Alex has been spending a lot of time, and we're a year and a half in on testing on some of the stuff. You're going to have to go with a little bit stronger pin to PAP. So you're going to have to shorten that pin distance. Also, depending on the core, the RG and the differential, depending on, the core numbers and the core shape, you're also going to figure out, you're going to have to figure it out does it need to stay, either parallel to your vertical axis line, or do you need to kick it past it? Do you need to kick it the other direction? It's going to be one of those things. There's going to be a little bit of a trial and error for everyone of sorts. But we have found that in converting once you take an extra whole lot of something, and we've been testing all players, like I said, from two-handers to, we've even had local league bowlers here in Utah. We've actually done some tests with that, I only average like 160. Mm-hmm. They've got a ball that's got a shift and a big hole. Well, how do you help them get that same kind of look on the lane? And there's different things you have to do. So, you're going to be looking to, like I said, strengthen those numbers a little bit. Probably have to go to a little bit shorter pin buffer, which means, the pin, not only the pin distance from the PAP, but also the pin distance from the pin to the vertical axis line, in order to help get the core to change direction a little bit. And And again, it depends on, then you got to factor in too your variables based on, lane surface and lane machines and lane oils. And I think, that's the other thing that evolution of the sport just in the last decade. It's not only just bowling balls, but you think about all the, all different, the new lane machine technology and all the different lane oils. I mean, it was, not too long ago, somebody was asking me about something and I'm going to go, well, Kegel's got, they'd actually just discontinued it. Kegel's got, I believe now currently, I think they have 12 different oils. So when you ask a person that, I said, well, what's a lane surface? They go, well, I don't know. I said, well, you get into synthetics and there's all these different variations of synthetics. I go, well, then what kind of lane machine they have? And they, even if it's a pro shop guy, and they go, oh, we got a Kegel machine. I'm like, okay, well, what generation? Oh, we got this. I'm like, okay, well, which of the 12 lane oils are you using? Mm-hmm. And they go, man, I didn't realize there was that many variables. I'm like, and the problem is they don't stop. They keep showing through.
Right.
A funny one on that was, I see we get another question here, but another funny one I had was last fall. I was actually traveling, or was it last fall? Last spring, I guess. I was with Steve Todd, one of our sales reps there in the Midwest, and we went through Kentucky, and we went into the bowling center, and we did a matchmaker and some stuff. But the owner of the pro shop was telling me, he was finally happy that him and the owner were finally starting to figure things out. And he goes, yeah, he goes, we had the darnest time. He goes, we had, he goes, I couldn't sell anything, a hustle almost took too much. And, like tropical breezes at the time, tropical breezes before we got to tropical surges. He goes, those, like, we couldn't keep those on the right side of the head pin. And I'm like, man. He goes, yeah, we just got this brand new lane machine. And the guy from, I forgot what distributor came out and helped him set it up. And then they had the guy from Kegel come out. And I'm like, man, and you guys couldn't sell it. He goes, most expensive ball I could sell was like $130. He goes, any of the big balls couldn't keep on the right side of the head pin. Mm-hmm. Well, come to find out, the head mechanic didn't change the pattern at all. He adjusted the machine speed on the Kegel machine. Mm-hmm. And so he had slowed it. He had changed it so much that all they had to do was adjust that machine speed back down because he was trying to get done faster. Mm-hmm. So all it was Kegel finally figured out there was a machine needed to come back down to where they had programmed it. And he goes, man, I don't even sell low end balls anymore. He goes, everything I sell is the HP4 and the Premier line. He goes, I sell asymmetric to everybody. It doesn't matter if they're a beginner bowler or not. They want to ball the hook, they just buy the big one. I'm like, wow, all because of all it was, like I said, was a machine speed. So that's like that's not even part of our business, but it's a variable we have to account for. So
well, I think a lot of the clubs I bowl at in the area here need to take a tip on that. I think they're doing the same. I think they're making the same mistake.
Yeah, and again, how many times? I mean, we've all seen it too. Is how many times where, and again, I'm no lane machine expert, but I've been friends with the guys at Kegel for a long time and have communication with them whenever I need. Like if I'm on the road and somebody says, "Hey, do you know anything about lane machines?" I'm like, "Well, I know a little bit, but I can also get in contact with the guys that do." And more often than not, it's some of the simplest stuff too, guys. I mean, it's like, well, have you checked the squeegee? Have you done this? Have you done that? And they're like, well, no. And I'm like, man, this is basic like lane maintenance 101. But, if their head mechanic or whoever's working at that point in time, forgets to do something or they kind of just don't pay attention to it. I mean, again, the lane machine is an investment for a bowling center. That's a key component to this whole industry,
Sure is. Yep.
So.
Yeah, we got a few more questions here coming in. We'll try to get through them for folks. This one here from Steve says, what kind of ball or of a ball speed dominant bowler should have? What type of ball?
Well, as one myself, don't be scared of surface. That's always one thing. Usually I, back in my day, because in my rev rate, it's not very high. One of the dominant forces for me was always using solids and going with more surface. In today's world, like what we have on, the rotor grip line or even the storm side, like on my side, you take like the, like an idle, you can drill an idle more aggressive because that's got microtracks. That's our version of the nanotechnology. So that's a nanoparticle additive designed for the heavier oil and having a symmetrical block in it. Halo Vision is a ball that's got plenty of giddy up, for even though it's a hybrid but it's got texture on it, it digs in. And now more recently, the UFO, I mean, that's one of our, again, people go, I got the UFO and it doesn't hook. And I'm like, okay, well, hopefully you're bowling on a flood, because, if you've got a medium to light oil condition, or, the pattern's got a whole bunch of friction, and they go, they're watching me throw a shot, and you watch them throw the shot, and I'm like, okay, well, that ball burned up in your backswing.
Yep.
Let's go put some polish on it or whatever. And they go, what do you mean? And I'm like, again, that cover stock is super aggressive. And that also has, a version of that's our microtracks on it. That's got some nanoparticle in it. We get the same kind of stuff on the Storm side as well. The Gravity Evolve and some other big balls with big covers. And again, even if you feel, and you have to look at the variables of, if the lane surface, if there's something that factors in, whether it's lane surface or lane oil, or, the pattern, as far as the type of oil or the pattern or whatever, you've also got to factor into, do you need, maybe is it a hybrid, or do you need a pearl, and do you need to add surface to it? Because maybe one of those things that maybe the super big balls may be legit, may just be too much. But I can't count the number of times where, even if I was back when I was bowling a bit more, I mean, like I said, my rev rates, if I get 200 revs, my rev rate's 200, I'm having a good day, Guys used to, growing up in St. Louis, and Flanagan, growing up in St. Louis, guys, when I first got into bowling, I used to throw it hard and straight. Like, guys would joke at me when I moved into second arrow, like, Schlemer, you all right? Like, Chris, you all right? Our nose hurting a little bit, because I could camp out and throw it hard off the gutter, kind of a la Eugene McCune, but like with a less rev rate. But as I learned even back then, going to different bowling balls and whatever, like I said, adding the surface, and and that's one of those huge tips I can give people too. There was plenty of those years out on tour that I don't think people quite understand. Even when they see a shiny ball on TV, 99.9% of the time it has surface on it. The one stat I kept track the one year, and this was probably the mid to late 2000s. I drilled over the course of a full season, and you got to remember that was, our 14, 16 weeks plus, a couple majors and some other events and stuff. There was one year where I think I went through 690 something balls. There were less than 5 that didn't have a surface change by the time they hit the lane out of that many. And people go, what do you mean? I go, there are some guys that would either do the surface themselves, or they would ask me to do the surface before they even worked it out. And it's because they like to see their ball do a certain thing. So even if it was a shiny, and again, the shiny balls look shiny on TV, but you also got to remember too, back in the day, before we got to the uniform sanding thing, guys would sand the spots of the flare and whatever. But there was plenty of guys that would use, the go-to is like a beat up 2000 or a 2000 pad. But there's some guys that, man, there's 500 or 1,000 in the spot on the ball. Just make sure they saw their ball see a certain part of the lane. Not that I wanted to see that as a tour rep, but that's what they like to see. And their peace of mind is, oh, I got to sand this. Well, then they come back like, oh, this hook's too much. I'm like, well, dude, the backside of the ball is as wide as this paper. Of course it's going to hook. What do you think was going to happen? So then I have to go fix the cover, and they're like, oh, thanks for doing that. Oh, yeah, okay. But
speaking of helping bowlers, we got a question here from Jack. Says, hey, Chris, if you drilled for Belmo, was he picked? Yeah. You just like, give me a ball and I'll win.
Well, Jack, I can tell you, what's funny is when I first met Belmo back in the early 2000s, long before his tour days, I can remember, the two-handed bowling thing. And that's what's funny is, now, and I love Belmo to death. I've been good friends with him for a long time. He's actually he's helped make that a trend and help make that a kind of a way of life in the bowling world, kind of bring it to the mainstream. But there was 200 bowlers like long before him. But I can remember meeting him the first time he was a kid. He was probably, man, we're talking, he's in his mid 30s now, late 30s, mid 30s, I guess. And I met him probably like 02, like a high roller. Like, oh, you got to watch this kid from Australia. And he just zapped all over it. And I'm like, well, that's cool and all. And of course, he won a lot of sweepers and stuff like that. But he's also bowling against amateurs. And I'll never forget him coming out to, because the big thing was making the Belmo hype. Like, oh, he's two-handed. Oscar was already out there. But Belmo coming because Belmo had won so many more events. And kind of started his mainstream, even as an amateur, he started to kind of mainstream the two-handed thing. And after a couple weeks on tour, he came up to me and he goes, "Mate," he goes, "these guys are pretty good." I said, "Yeah, who'd you he goes, "Well," he goes, I grew up watching these guys." He goes, "But man, some of these guys are really good." I'm like, "Yeah." And that was really I can say that was probably the turning point. That was the drive and desire of Belmo to get better, because he realized after only a couple weeks that, he was so used to it. He was like, "Oh, I can stand left, throw it right," or, "Hey, I can play the gutter." Well, the problem is you got Walter Ray who can play the gutter, and Brian Voss can play the gutter, and Norm Duke can play the gutter. Now he's got guys that can play the gutter better than him. When you get to different pairs, and there were some of those aha moments whenever he's crossing next to some of those guys, and Duke was probably the king of it, because Norm's really analytical and seeing different parts of the lane, and in practice he's picking up on pairs, and if the pattern's going to let him play out, he's going to play out. But if he gets to a pair where there's something wrong with the lane install, or he sees something off, his ball doesn't do the right thing, he'll change balls and jump in maybe on one lane or on a pair until he can get to the next pair and get back out to the gutter. And I want to say there was a time when he did that, and Belmo was like, he goes, "What's he doing?" And I go, "Oh, he didn't like that pair." Like it was one of those deals where he's plugging away like 240 from the gutter, and all of a sudden he gets the next pair, changes the ball, jumps in to like between third, gets into like 18, changes balls, but shoots 230. Well, Belmo still gets to that pair, grinds out like 170. He goes, "How did he know that?" I'm like, "Okay, well, that's Norm being Norm. That's what you have to learn, dude." But Belmo really, his big thing was learning the touch and feel. Him rooming with Bill O'Neill, and he spent the time and effort to research and talk to a lot of the tour guys. I know that it was a little awkward at first when Belmo came out, because it was the big hype. He's the next best thing. Well, he didn't do anything for the first however many events. Like, there was a little, the old guys were like, "Who's this kid?" But once they finally started communicating, and he finally started he'd go sit down and talk to Pete, or he'd go sit and talk to Norm, or he would talk to, there's even times where he talked to Walter Ray. And obviously it's funny now, Walter's gotten so good at the two-handed thing. It's kind of vice versa. Belmo's like, "Hey, how do I do this stuff?" And now it goes the other way. Walter's like, "Hey, how do I two-hand this thing?" It's just been it's been pretty wild to see how that evolution. But yeah, Belmo, again, getting back to the layout thing, he's a simple one. Certain balls he likes over the course of time, and if he likes a ball and it does a certain thing, he'll throw it until he sees it not do the right thing, and they'll go, "I want a fresh one of that same exact thing." Same ball, same layout, and fresh covers. And that's how, and that was happening before this whole urethane craze. There were times where Belmo would have, whether it was 5 or 6 high roads, or, remember Victory Road Solid was one of his faves. There were times he's like, he goes, "Hey, can you go find Victory Road, da-da-da-da," like the serial number, because he'd have 6 of them. Like, this one's got only this number of games on it, so I need that one. Okay. So there was just different things. So yeah, he's again another one that I haven't talked to him. Last time he was in the office, we did talk about it with the bounce hole thing. He's been practicing in, prior to this pandemic thing, he's been practicing at the family center there, but again, he's going to have to play around, and he wants to come to Storm again and learn. Again, we got to kind of go through the data and break it down his game and go, okay, what's going to be a good core placement for Belmo? Because again, Belmo is different than Kyle, is different than Simo, is different than Chris Va. I mean, all these guys are different. So how do we, structure for them? So
specific question here, and this will be the last question that we take, and then we'll get a couple of final thoughts in before we have to let you go today. But Steve here, very specific, says, what you think is a good ball for me with my rev rate? I have low speed, 13 miles per hour. That's pretty low. 30-degree axis tilt, or 30 degrees axis rotation and 10 degrees of tilt. So very specific question here, Schlem.
Okay. What do you think is ball with my rev? So I guess it goes into stuff we talked about earlier with, you get you factor in the variables of, the lane surface, the type of pattern you bowl on, the type of oil. Are you needing, something that falls in the higher RG category? Is it something where we have to focus more on the core numbers in order to make it get to a certain part of the lane? or is it something that can be done with cover stock? Meaning, is it a hybrid? And then you got to get the variables of the hybrid. Is it one of those deals where you need, like a Hustle HSB, which is a 2-part hybrid, like a high road, you got half solid, half pearl, or is it something where it's got, like a phase 3 that's got 2-part pearl, 1-part solid? There's different ways to attack it. And I think, in some cases, some people can handle it by a factory shined material, whether it's a pearl or a hybrid, and then they can get away. Still, they can use bigger cores. Again, it gets into layouts as well. But in some instances, it may be that even with that low ball speed, you can get away with that. But then it may have to go the variable where maybe we have to focus more so on the slow ball speed or lower ball speed at 13. Do we need a higher RG? And then is it a higher RG ball with higher diff or higher RG ball with lower diff? What are we trying to control? What are we trying to build? And like I said, it's a case-by-case basis. I think that would be one of those things to talk to your ball driller or pro shop operator. Just get some of the details and try and dial that in a little bit more. Because, those are just a couple ideas or examples. To go through the whole checklist with you would, hopefully you get to sit down and draw a roadmap,
Yeah. I'm sure if you could see the person bowl, that's different.
Yeah.
Once you have some visuals,
correct.
Look at the layout that's currently on the ball he has, and then see how it reacts. Then you can make the tweaks that you need to do. Just starting from zero, it could take a couple tries to dial it in.
Yeah, he gave us his specs and stuff, but like I said, it's one of those things that how do we to get him a reaction? Is it do we do it with cover? Do we have to do it with core? Do we have to do it with core and cover? And then it gets into how much flare do we need in what part of the lane, to make it go through the pins a certain way. It's one of those deals. Nobody likes to leave a corner pin. I know I don't. It's one of those things when you bowl is like the last thing you want to do is so you want to make sure you get the right type of ball motion through the pin deck as well. So I think there's just a lot of things that you kind of have to sit down and go through. And like I said, I would go back to your ball driller or your coach if you got a coach that does video work or whatever, and kind of put all these stuff together. So.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're running close to our time here. Lee, any final questions for Schlem?
Oh man, I know I had some things on my mind that I would like to have asked. I'm kind of curious, really, what's moving forward for Roto-Grip, and really, I was going to actually start with, but we went through a lot of time about the history. How you originally got involved with Roto-Grip. And I know that could be a long story, but
that can be
I'm sure a lot of people.
That's actually a really good story.
I'm sure a lot of people don't know. How does a person get to be in the position where you're in?
So I was very fortunate way back when to kind of cross paths with the right people at the right time. As I grew up there outside of St. Louis, running one of the most prominent shops in the St. Louis area. Learn how to drill and honestly, my break, and I still thank him to this day. The reason I'm in the bowling industry is actually Brian Birch. BB was our Ebonite rep back in the day, and he was actually the one that at one point in time, he goes, "Hey, I think I can." I was a kid and I was going to ITT Tech. I have a career. My degree's in computer aided drafting.
Okay.
But I'm in the pro shop business doing the deal, and BB was like, "Oh yeah, there's some other good shop." He goes, "I think I get you to Chicago, this and that." Well, then Birch called me. He goes, "Hey, would you be interested in drilling for the ladies tour?" And that's really kind of how I got my break. BB, because he was from up around that way and knew Tony Hall and those guys, and even Sean Morris. I've known Sean. I worked with Sean on the truck, but Birch was the one that got me connected, and I did that for a little bit. And what's funny is Hank Boomershine. Hank worked nationals and did a bunch of stuff. And, when Hank got hired in 2000, he was the tour rep for Storm. Mm-hmm. And people remember too. You got to remember too that Storm. Bill and Barb started High Score Products in '85, and Storm didn't really become a name until the kind of the late '90s, and it wasn't even then. It still wasn't very big. Mm-hmm. And then 2000, Hank was tour rep. He did it for 1 year, and they quickly realized like I said, Hank's one of the smartest people you meet as far as core designs and all other stuff. And he's a great coach on top of it. Then I've, like I said, I've known Hank that whole time, and he became the Roto Grip guy, and then it turned into, hey. And what's funny is after my tour, after drilling a ladies tour, I worked for Visionary for a year because I grew up with all the guys in St. Louis, with the Wonders family. So I worked on a ladies tour repping Visionary, and actually it was then Hank and West Pie, and they're like, hey man, this kid, he knows what's up, and they were kind of the ones that helped open that door a little bit too. And I was one of the few guys that got interviewed for the Storm Tour rep gig, which again I'd tell the story the other day. I can't remember who the fourth was, but the funny thing was at the time it was actually Sean Morris, Chad Murphy. Chad, this was before he went to Columbia, and long before he's the guy in charge of USBC now, and somebody else. And so I got that gig, and it was always one of those things that even early on, like I said, Hank's the cores and stuff like that. And there's times where, because I have a drafting degree, so I can kind of help and see with molds. And there's times where he's like, hey man, I see the shape, and it's like, okay, we'll try and do cuts and do whatever. And now him and Apps are really a good tag team. They really don't need my help much anymore. But the big thing I was always into was, even in the early days, was a lot of there's a handful of the Storm logos in the early 2000s that were drawn by me. I'd actually draw them and send them in, and then they're like, oh hey, yeah, Schlemmer, we're going to use that. We're gonna make this into a logo. And so that's really kind of my forte, kind of the artistic. And that's kind of really how I spun into the brand manager thing, because I always wanted to get into the, well, why did somebody call it that, and why did they make it look like that? And you got to remember too, Lee. I mean, we're old enough. You think back to like when we went from the urethane balls into the reactive balls. Yeah, there was a couple of them that were pretty good, but then as things started transitioning, you're like, man, somebody actually spent time working on it. They developed, they made that color and named it that. Like,
I still see that.
Yeah, well, trust me, I've had my fair share of train wrecks too. But you also have to understand too, my focus is always, like we mentioned earlier, trying to make it look different than everything else in the market. Because my thing, and even still to this day, my goal, and as you pro shop operator, you just got people coming to the bowling center, and they come in and ask a question. I remember back in my pro shop days, people come in and are like, hey, I want that new ball that so-and-so got. And you're like, I don't really remember. What color is it?
What color is it?
I don't know. What name is it? I don't know. What brand? I don't know. So that, and since Roto Grip doesn't have smell, that's kind of been my focus point since day one. Whenever we decided to actually put more focus back into Roto Grip, because Hank did Roto Grip for a long time, but then when he moved up into sales and marketing and stuff like that, it was one of those things that we actually kind of let Roto Grip kind of drift a little bit for a couple of years, and it really wasn't a viable option of sorts. It was kind of hanging there. We made a little bit of an effort, but when they decided that, hey, we need to put somebody like sole focus, again, I've been a part of the Storm family now for 19 years. And I tell people, I bleed Roto Grip, but my heart's Storm. That's what I've been a part of. But really my thing is, when I get to coming up with a bowling ball, it's like, okay, I need colors. I need some sort of identifier that when a customer walks in, it's funny. You ask people like, hey, can you help me? Yeah. Or they go, whether they call or even email now to the office. They're like, yeah, I bowled Tuesday night, and I was wondering about a new ball. And now they're calling me, the brand manager at Roto Grip, and they go, and I ask them a question. I'm like, okay, well, what ball did you throw then on Tuesday? Well, I don't know. I'm like, and this might be Wednesday. It might be the very next day, and they don't know. They don't know what they got in their bag. So, that's kind of really, like I said, my focus point of that. But yeah, letting them and let me do the creative stuff. That's been the fun part too. Kind of help. Even though we hired an ad agency back in the day, and they kind of started the concept, and then I just kind of took it and ran with it. Now I still use them for production. Like this banner over the top. It's one of those things of, hey, I want to see something like this, or I see that. Let's change this, do that. And even like right now, working with finalizing the catalog and doing different things. That's the stuff I enjoy. Developing, creating things that people can see and appreciate and be a part of, and also like, oh, hey, I want to be a part of that. And even what's funny, it was last year I met this little girl in West Virginia. which I didn't even know, Steve Todd, actually your sales the same trip. The guy goes, Steve comes over, he goes, hey, you have a fan over here, and it was a 10-year-old girl, and I'm like, what? And her dad comes over and he's like, man, he goes, you have no idea how excited she's like. Once she found out she was going to Matchmaker and I was going to be there, she's like, Dad, you don't get it. We're Roto Schlemer. Like, it was cool. And so I asked her, I said, hey, what's so cool? She's like, I don't know. You're just like cool. Like, you wear cool shirts and you got cool hair and you're just cool. I'm like, okay, I'm down with that.
Yeah.
You know, but it was one of those things that, again, trying to draw the correlation and just have something that people can latch onto. So that's really that's the focus.
So, well, just so you're like creating things, the colors is a big thing for you, and just creating the look
and names and logos. And
what's been your favorite? What's your favorite color combination that you've created?
Man, there's been some, and see that's almost as bad as the conversation where people go, well, who is your favorite tour player?
Too hard, huh?
You know, it's like they're all my kids, and making all the ball, come up with the different bowling balls. They're like all my babies.
Is the one that you just like when you saw it come down the line or whatever, you were like, oh my God, that's just beautiful. I love it. It's a masterpiece.
I don't know. There's been quite a few of them over the years. You know? There's been some. Oh man,
that Pearl Cell comes to mind. That Pearl Cell, a lot of units sold, and West Malapple, multiple 300s with it on TV.
Yeah, I was still tour rep at the time. I was part of that TV process of that. Hank. That was one of Hank's deals. Just some of the color combos. I don't know.
Wrecker looked good going down the lane.
Yeah, it did.
The Wrecker, the blue and white. I mean, that was one of those deals that, and what's funny is the number of units we sold out was pretty high. And that color combination had been used in the industry before. But some reason people were like, man, this color combo is just like the best I've ever seen. I'm like, well, you don't remember like the other 4 balls that come out from other companies that were like, oh, well, this one just looks better. Oh, okay. Same colors, but it just looks better.
There's a difference, though.
No performance. There's a difference. You know what, man?
Uproar right behind it too. That was a contrasting ball. Belmo won a major with each one of those balls.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Color combo. One of the more. I can tell you guys one of the more recent, because I do have my hand and they let me do what I do. The MVP Pearl,
okay.
The blue, gold, and white.
Yep.
Of course, I had to make something for the St. Louis Blues won the Stanley Cup. Now, that's kind of how that one now fell together. And people are like, man, that's a really pretty color. I'm like, well, then I go, yeah, well, they're St. Louis Blues colors. And they go, wait, what? And then they go look at the logo and they go, oh. Yeah, it is. So there's stuff like that and that's even tough too, of trying to get, when you start getting tones and shades and over the course of time, especially when you go to mass production. I mean, that's a tough thing too, as far as getting because you got batches and everything's got to get mixed and there's ratios and you're just going to make sure everything kind of goes the same. And and that's why there's variations of colors over the years.
Yeah.
Yep.
I imagine.
It kind of works.
Yep.
So.
Cool.
All right. Well, I think it's about time to wrap this up. We've gone a little over our time, about 10 minutes over, but
okay.
Certainly enjoyed catching up with you, Schlemmer. Sure, man.
Yeah.
You're doing well, man. You just keep doing it. 19 years, you said?
Yeah, May 1st is 19 years now.
Congratulations, man. I mean,
congrats.
Yeah.
I mean, you really have. You've done really well with your career, and all of us from St. Louis are super proud of what you've been able to do, man.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, no, it was, like I said, it came up, Dave came up and he goes, man, 19 years? He goes, and of course, every time he goes, I can remember you couldn't even rent a car. I'm like, I know. Every time I would go back to I couldn't rent a car.
You got a mirror coming, I think. If I know my Storm history there, I think you got a mirror coming up next year, don't you?
Yeah, you get the autographed poster from the employees deal. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, but no, it's been a fun ride. I mean, obviously now things right now are a little interesting for us all because we've never nobody's experienced this. The pandemic and the bowling world. We're all kind of looking at each other, and even the communication with other brands and distributors and bowling centers and pro shops. It's like everybody's looking for answers, but unfortunately, nobody has answers because we just don't know. I mean, that's that's the tough part. We're very fortunate here in Utah that we're kind of ahead of the curve and ahead of the game. How they've had the city tournaments already into its third weekend down in Salt Lake City. And our sales rep in the West was just in Arizona last weekend. They had a tournament there with like 220 entries.
Awesome.
So people are getting their spots where people get back bowling. So that's what we're excited about. That's going to happen. We just need the doors to open and everybody kind of get back to feeling comfortable. I think that's the kind of the main focus right now. So.
Mm-hmm.
All right, bro. Well, thanks for joining us tonight. Really
Absolutely, guys. I appreciate you having me on.
Chris.
Anytime. Glad to help.
Be safe. Be well, brother.
All right.
Thanks.
Take care. Thanks.
All right, Lee. Well, that's going to do it for this week's episode number 6. Thanks for letting me fill in. JR will be back next week, I assume.
Should be. I'm sure he will.
Yeah, and
Yep.
you did a great job tonight, Lee. I just ducked out of there for a while and let you guys just do your thing. And Schlemer brought some great storytelling and some great knowledge to the folks. That's for sure.
Yeah, he's a good. He's got a lot of good stories. You could probably talk for hours with Schlemmer, and he's got a lot of. He's a very. I found out we played match game with him too. He's a historian of the game too. We didn't really get into that part of it, but he knows a lot about the history.
Yep, definitely. And don't forget, everybody, you can save 10% over at BowlerX.com with code XLive for the show right here. So, and don't forget to check out that new membership program, man. I'm really impressed with that, Lee. People should check that out. I'm telling you, I like it.
Yeah, it's cool. It's going over very well. There's a lot of interest in it, and we've actually got a lot of questions from people about it. We've been answering, and there's definitely some excitement about it. And actually, I'm working on maybe coming up with some other packages. It's going so well.
That's great, man. Well, thanks again for having me on the show this evening. Really appreciate it. You're
Thank
going to
you.
be on the Inside Bowling Show this Thursday, so make sure you
So
check.
I'm told.
Yeah, it's going to be good.
Guess we're doing a little pro shop show, right?
We are. Yeah, we are. Definitely. You and Drew Parkin and Jeff Hussery will be on the program. So I'm looking forward to that one with you guys and appreciate all you do with Inside Bowling, brother. Really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, that's going to do it for tonight's program. Thanks, everybody, for watching. And JR will be back next week with episode number 7 on next Tuesday night. Thanks again, everybody, and have a great night.
Night.